Hello, and welcome to Unity of Fredericksburg. My name is Janetta, and I am pleased to welcome all of you to the Unity of Fredericksburg weekly online gathering. At Unity of Fredericksburg, we are advancing the movement of spiritual awakening and transformation through unity, a positive path for spiritual living. We thank those of you watching on YouTube, live or later, and invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you are able to attend live, we encourage you to join us in the Zoom community room for the full Sunday morning experience, including music, prayer, and connection. Our weekly newsletter includes the Sunday service link, and you can subscribe to receive that on our website at uofva.org. For everyone local to Central Virginia, Unity of Fredericksburg offers a variety of fun and enriching in-person gatherings every month. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter at uofva.org for all the details. Our message today comes from our minister, Reverend Cheryl Fair. And now, here's Reverend Cheryl.
Thank you, Johnetta, and welcome, everyone who's in the Zoom room right now with me, and those of you who are watching on YouTube, whether you're watching now or later, we appreciate you being present as a part of the energy that we call Unity of Fredericksburg. So our broadcast date today is Sunday, October the 27th, and there's quite a few things happening over the next week. So I thought we'd start out by looking at those. Now, those of us in the US are familiar with something that will be happening on Thursday, October 31st, but you might not be aware that this year on October 31st is Diwali, the Hindu festival of lights. So this is a Hindu celebration symbolizing the victory of light and goodness over darkness. And during Diwali, families come together to light lamps and exchange gifts and partake in feasts. So if you don't want to do Halloween on Thursday, maybe you could play around with Diwali if you're in a place where you don't get a lot of trick-or-treaters. So of course, Halloween is October 31st. Now, Halloween in pagan tradition represents the last harvest festival of the year. And of course, it's a time when we make fun of being afraid, right? So here's a quote from Patricia Morace in The Roommate. Life is scary, but that's what makes it fun. Why not make fun of and enjoy our fear? It's like trying to make us, it's like life is trying to make us fear it. And on this day, we mock its attempts and say, no, not today. Today, I'm not scared of anything you throw at me. So hopefully everyone will be having fun on October 31st. Then November the 1st, in Catholic tradition, November 1st is known as All Saints' Day, a day to remember the saints of the Catholic tradition. Here's a quote from Scott Aubrey in Spiritual Passages. On All Saints' Day, we remember celebrated saints like Mother Teresa, St. Francis of Assisi, Thomas Aquinas, individuals who discerned spiritual truth and did great works. We also honor the saints among us, those who feed the hungry, visit the sick, comfort others, stand guard at school crossings. They give and sustain life, and there is a saint within us all. Also happening November 1st and 2nd is Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, which is celebrated in Mexico and Central America and more in the United States. And for Day of the Dead, families create altars in their homes or at gravesides to honor their loved ones who have passed. So celebrating Day of the Dead means facing the fact that death is real, and that although our loved ones are no longer with us, we can remember them and celebrate the life we shared together on this special day. So, a lot going on in the week to come. And I will mention, just as a side note, that in the U.S., continental U.S., the time change will happen for next Sunday. So everyone be aware of that. So for today, we are continuing with our theme for 2024, which is on well-being. And our focus in October is emotional well-being. Now, all of these celebrations we've been talking about and rituals are rituals that enhance our sense of emotional well-being at a time of year when the days are noticeably getting shorter and the nights are getting longer. So with Diwali, we're celebrating light and goodness. Halloween, making fun out of scary things. All Saints Day, remembering those that inspire us to goodness. And Day of the Dead, connecting with and honoring our ancestors. Participating in any or all of these help to enhance our own emotional well-being. So we started off the month on October the 6th, kind of recognizing our emotions as valid, a valid part of our consciousness, and kind of looking at how culturally we do have a culture that tends to dismiss or diminish emotions, but our emotions are just as valuable as our thoughts and our instinctual impulses. So we talked about that at the beginning of the month. On the 13th, I had a topic called Beyond Duality, because again, very often our human brains, our outer culture tells us that we are separate. And this is what gives rise to a sense of disruption to our emotions, feeling separate, feeling alone, feeling isolated. So when we have a good spiritual foundation of oneness and wholeness, then when those moments come up where we feel out of sorts, we have a good sense of groundedness. So today, as we finish out the month, my title is Put Your Own Mask On First. So any of us who have taken a flight on an airplane has heard something like this. In the unlikely event of a loss of cabin pressure, oxygen masks will automatically deploy from the overhead air vents. To use the mask, simply pull the mask toward you and place it over your nose and mouth. Adjust the elastic bands to fit snugly. Breathe normally. It is important to secure your own mask before assisting others. So, put your own mask on first. Now, the reason that they explain that is because it really is kind of in the moment counterintuitive, right? Because many of us would be inclined to help the person next to us. If we're with a child, if we're with an older person, if, people nearby, to help other people. But the instructions are clear that you need to put on your own mask first. And the reason is you can't help anyone if you yourself are not conscious because of a lack of oxygen, right? If you're not steady in yourself, you can't help to steady anyone else, right? So essentially, what we're looking at today is the role of self compassion in maintaining our own emotional well-being. So another familiar adage is you can't pour from an empty cup, right? You've heard that. Now this one might be more useful and more appropriate, because when we talk about you can't pour from an empty cup, you have a sense that filling up your own cup must be done on a regular basis, right? Whereas the example about the mask, put on your own mask first, this is an example that takes place in an emergency, right? But both are good examples of self-compassion. So we'll continue to kind of weave that in as we talk today. But as many of you know, I always kind of like to start with defining words, like what are we talking about today? So let's start with the word compassion itself, because there's a lot to be learned with that. So the mainstream definition of compassion is from the Latin, meaning to suffer together with. Suffer together with. And here's a further definition. Compassion can be defined as a feeling of deep sympathy and sorrow for another who is stricken by misfortune, accompanied by a strong desire to alleviate the suffering. So, just like with the put your own mask on first example, there is a sense of urgency about this, that someone is injured or has a circumstance that needs attention right now. And yet, we know that this muscle of compassion is something that we need to exercise and engage in an everyday kind of way. So I'd like to take our definition to a more nuanced level. One of the sources that I've been using this month as we've addressed emotional well-being is the Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, which is a wonderful encyclopedia where she's really defining things, words that we use all the time, but what does this really mean? So here's what Brene Brown says about compassion. Compassion is the daily practice of recognizing and accepting our shared humanity so that we treat ourselves and others with loving kindness and we take action in the face of suffering. She goes on a little bit further to say compassion is not a practice of better than or I can fix you. It's a practice based in the beauty and pain of shared humanity. So, one of the things I want to point out in that definition that I read is she talks about compassion as a daily practice. So, not just in the case of an emergency, put your mask on first, but that more that example of filling your own cup is a daily practice. And then I read that part there, we're differentiating between an attitude of I can fix it or I can be with it, right? So I can fix it is all about doing, right? And if we are doing for others, I can fix it is not about listening, right? I can fix it doesn't say I'm going to sit with you, hear what you're feeling, hear what your concerns are. It's just, I can fix it, right? I can fix it also blows past our own feelings and the wisdom that our feelings have to show us, right? That's the value of our emotions, is that they kind of, point towards what is in alignment with our truth and what isn't. And if we just move into fix it mode, we just kind of, bypass the whole wisdom of our emotions. Now, the where we're heading towards here with compassion is I can be with it. So whether I'm with another or with myself, it's sitting and listening to the feelings that are coming up. It's all about being. So here's a little bit more about that specific subject from Brene Brown, and she's coming at it from the perspective of parenting. So here she is saying, before I fully understood that the action part of compassion wasn't making things better or fixing, I would race to flip on the metaphorical lights when my kids were suffering. Now I try to sit with them in the dark and show them how to feel the discomfort. So this is an important distinction when it comes to compassion, my friends, because rushing to fix and do things for ourselves or for others is not engaging with our emotions like we need to when we are truly compassionate, right? So now let's look a little bit closer at self-compassion. Now, one of the sources I've been working with this month also is self-compassion. There's a lot of glare on the cover there, but this is by Kristen Neff. The subtitle is The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself. So, close to the beginning of the book, Kristen Neff talks about how much she learned about self-compassion by spending some time studying Buddhist philosophy. Excuse me. So let me read to you about that. So she's studying Buddhism here. She says, as a part of my exploration, I read Sharon Salzberg's classic book, Loving Kindness, and was never the same again. I had known that Buddhists talk a lot about the importance of compassion, but I had never considered that having compassion for yourself might be as important as having compassion for others. From the Buddhist point of view, you have to care about yourself before you can really care about other people. If you are continually judging and criticizing yourself while trying to be kind to others, you are drawing artificial boundaries and distinctions that only lead to feelings of separation and isolation. That's the opposite of oneness, interconnection, and universal love, which is the ultimate goal of most spiritual paths, no matter what tradition. So, like the example of you can't pour from an empty cup or put your own mask on first, it's not possible for you to demonstrate true compassion unless you practice self-compassion first. So take a breath, my friends, and ask yourself a question. How are you doing at practicing self-compassion first? All right. Now, before we go any further, we've been looking at some social science approaches here. Let's take a little sidestep here and look at spiritual foundations for self-compassion. Let's start with Unity founder Charles Fillmore in his classic book about the 12 powers. He's talking about the power of zeal. Here, Fillmore said, do not put all your enthusiasm into teaching, preaching, healing, and helping others. Help yourself. Many enthusiastic spiritual workers have let their zeal to demonstrate truth to others rob them of the power to demonstrate truth for themselves. So here's another opportunity to ask yourself a question, my friends. How does your enthusiasm for helping others compare to your enthusiasm for helping yourself? Just look at that for a moment. Let's take it a little further with a quote from Myrtle Fillmore, from Myrtle Fillmore's Healing Letters. And she's starting off this section focusing on something from the Bible. Here's Myrtle. Jesus says that if we love him, we will keep his commandments. Remember what those commandments are? And here she's quoting the Bible from Mark 12, verses 30 and 31. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy strength and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. Myrtle goes on to say, it is the Lord God within us that we are to be devoted to love, unify ourselves with, be obedient to. Our own spiritual self must have our attention and love and care and consideration. If we are neglecting our own spiritual development, our own health, we are not keeping the first and greatest commandment. And if we are not keeping it, we cannot keep the second. We must learn to love our own spiritual self and do that which is best for us and incidentally best for all others. So take another breath, my friends, and ask yourself this question. How are you doing at loving your own spiritual self? All right. So we're going to follow Myrtle's lead a little bit further because she was focusing on Jesus. So in unity, we will refer to Jesus as our way shower, our elder brother. We look at what he says and what he does and demonstrates as an example. We don't look at Jesus as an exception, like the one and only Son of God, because he was pretty clear that anything he did, we can do. So let's look at, did Jesus demonstrate self-compassion? Well, yes, he did numerous times. So when we're looking for an example of, how should I show up in this circumstance? Jesus had plenty of examples for us. So geez, how about resting? All right, when there are plenty of examples where he and his apostles are, walking for hours and hours and hours, and when he took time to rest when he was tired, said, "Hey, I'm going to hang out here by this well. You guys go on. I'm going to rest here for a while." And he also instructed his disciples to rest a while on a regular basis. We see lots of examples with Jesus's ministry of him taking time for prayer and spending time in the stillness, in the silence. Now, it may have been phrased, as spending time with God, but we refer to that in unity as, the silence. So there are lots of examples of that, of him taking time away. And also, Jesus demonstrated that self-compassion of being aware of his own experiences and his own limits. There are times when he is in his prayer saying, "This is hard. What I'm going through here in this human life is hard." And that's an act of self-compassion, to get real about how hard this is, what you're going through. Um, and he demonstrated that. And of course, self-compassion is a part of his teachings. So let's look at what's called the golden rule, right? That comes from Matthew 7:12. And here's the verse: "In everything do to others as you would have them do to you, for this is the law and the prophets." Now, I do want to look into that tag on the end there and just make sure that we're framing it metaphysically in a good and healthy way. All right. So, and just so you know, in Unity, we tend to use, when we're quoting the Bible, we tend to use the New Revised Standard Version, NRSV. The quote that I had earlier from Myrtle, she was using King James. So, but here it is again, Matthew 7:12. "In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you, for this is the law and the prophets." Now, one of the wonderful sources of metaphysical interpretation, and I've got it right here, comes from Reverend Bill Holton. He's located down in Durham, North Carolina. I'm actually going to his house tomorrow or Tuesday. So I'll be able to see him and say, thank you once again for this is his metaphysical interpretation of the Gospel of Matthew. So this last bit here, for this is the law and the prophets. Here is Bill Holton's metaphysical interpretation of that. So we can frame that properly, because it kind of, it's on there and it's like, what does that mean? This is the law and the prophets. Well, here's what Bill Holton interprets it to be. This is the underlying principle of the universe and the true outpicturing of God's plan for us. So this, what we call the golden rule, is the underlying principle of the universe, as in whatever energy you are giving out to the world, doing unto others, is done unto you, right? So this addresses our capacity to receive as well as giving. And of course, we should note that this, what's called the golden rule, is actually included in almost every spiritual path, with different languaging and different approaches, but that do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But we also need to look at, there are two halves of that: how you are with others and how you are with yourself, or how you would like to receive as well as how you would like to give. So ask yourself this question: Do you give to yourself as you give to others? Okay. Now, as we come to towards the end here, let's look at going back to Kristen Neff again. We're looking at how can we put self-compassion into action. So Kristen Neff shows us 3 core components of self-compassion. The first component is self-kindness. So that is treating ourselves with the same kind of understanding and compassion that we might extend to a loved one. She does have an example of an activity in her book of hugging practice. So do this for a moment. Just kind of give yourself a hug. She suggests doing this. She says, you know what? Your body doesn't know the difference, whether it's you or someone else. Give yourself a hug. And she even will put some words to it. She tends to use the word darling. Kristen Neff was like, poor darling, this is really hard right now. Just acknowledging that what you're going through is tough. There's also, she has an example of someone who used an affirmation regularly to help with being kind to oneself. So you can try doing this. I love and accept myself exactly as I am. I love and accept myself exactly as I am. How would it be if you started using that throughout your day? The second component of self-compassion from Kristen Neff is having a sense of common humanity. In other words, recognizing that whatever kind of stress and difficulty I'm going through is similar to what other people are going through too. It's not like I'm off on my own. Nobody's ever been through this, right? So here is a quote about that from Kristen Neff about our inherent interconnectedness. If we can compassionately remind ourselves in moments of falling down that failure is part of the shared human experience, then that moment becomes one of togetherness rather than isolation. So if we're not, if we're giving ourselves the grace to not be like, I'm the, it's my circumstances are so special and different and difficult, if we look at it as part of like, okay, this is a hard process. Lots of people have been through this process. That actually helps us with our level of self-compassion. And the third component of self-compassion is mindfulness. So holding whatever our experience is in a balanced awareness rather than diving into the pain or exaggerating. And here again is a quote from Kristen Neff. Mindfulness refers to the clear seeing and non-judgmental acceptance of what's occurring in the present moment. Facing up to reality, in other words, the idea is that we need to see things as they are, no more, no less, in order to respond to our current situation in the most compassionate and effective manner. So all of this is so important because there's plenty of data from our friends here who are social scientists that people who demonstrate self-compassion tend to be more likely to cope with the things that happen in life in healthy ways. So I came across an article referencing you can't pour from an empty cup. So this was an article called Why Self-Care Isn't Selfish by Lauren Carter. And this is from a website called modernminds.com. And she kind of has another example other than the empty cup. Just as you would not expect your car to run continuously for 5,000 miles without stopping for gas or having the oil changed, you can't expect that of yourself. So running on empty eventually leads to a mechanism that no longer functions. So here are some questions from this article that you can ask yourself to kind of check in on your level of self-compassion. How full is your cup? Or how full is your gas tank right now? Do you need to stop and fill up? What do you need in this moment? What self-care activity would help to fill up your cup? How can you regularly schedule checking in with yourself into your day and into your week? So remember that a lot of times our impulse for self-care or self-compassion tends to show up in the emergency mode. Put your own mask on first, right? What we're looking at here is to be more proactive and see if you can build that check-in with yourself into your daily routine. So could you do that in the morning over a cup of tea or coffee or with a journal? Would it help to put a post-it note at different places in your life to say, hey, check in with yourself. How are you doing? So that you make sure your cup is full. So, could you give that a try? Try it for a week and see if that works. When it comes to our sense of emotional well-being, self-compassion is key. I'm running late as usual because I just always have so many things to share with you. I've got one more quote. It's a short one from Kristen Neff. Who is the only person in your life who is available 24/7 to provide you with care and kindness? You, right? You should be your number one source of care and kindness in your life. Here's a quote from Parker Palmer in Let Your Life Speak. Self-care is never a selfish act. It's good stewardship. Anytime we give ourselves the care we require, we do it not only for ourselves, but for the many others whose lives we touch. And one last quote, and we'll take that quote and move into our time of meditation. And this is from Maya Angelou. As you grow older, you will discover that you have two hands, one for helping yourself and the other for helping others. So I just want you to take that image of these two hands that you have as we take a deep breath and move into our time of meditation together. So just take a moment to take a couple of deep breaths and settle into your seat a little bit more. Just feel the feet on the floor, the body in the seat, the breath in the body. And once again, bring that image of your two hands, one for helping others, one for helping yourself. So let's just focus on those two hands. See that energy, how the energy flows when you're focused on that one hand that is helping others. See that wonderful energy of your compassion, your kindness, your caring, your sense of stewardship flowing out into the world. And now let's focus on the other hand and see yourself helping yourself, providing yourself with support, understanding, encouragement, love, inspiration. Just see and feel that flow of energy as you fill up your own cup so that you can then pivot and give out into the world. See that healthy, constant flow of energy. So just kind of lean into that as we move into our time of silence together, right here, right now. as you focus on that flow of energy. What color is that energy? What color is that energy as you fill your own cup first and then pivot to share with others? As you do for yourself, as you would have others do for you, as you would do for others. Just continue to see that healthy flow of energy and color and light, and dedicate yourself to filling your own cup first so that you can then pivot and be the energy of love in the world. So let's close our time of meditation today with an affirmation. I'll say it for you once and then you can repeat it with me a couple of times from home. I care for myself as I care for others, faithfully and lovingly. Say it with me, friends. I care for myself as I care for others, faithfully and lovingly. Let's do it one more time. I care for myself as I care for others, faithfully and lovingly. So I do, and so I see you all doing, filling your own cup first as you go through the week, checking in on your own self-compassion and self-care, and helping your emotional well-being to be balanced and thriving and healthy going forward into the next week. So now I'm going to turn it back over to our friend Johnetta.
Yes. Thanks for watching the weekly broadcast from Unity of Fredericksburg. Visit our website, uofva.org, to learn more about our mission of spiritual awakening and transformation, and support our ministry with your financial donation. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.